da 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 da. Da da dum dum da dum. Hello and welcome to Vermont Stretch Radio, the only radio show brought to you live from Killington, Vermont, Earth Gimel. Winter is here, prison is open, and you're wondering what you need to know to stay in the know about the megacity that dominates Earth Gimel's east coast, and possibly what on Earth Bait happened to everyone from the west coast. Short answer, either Scion killed them all, or the corporate overlords that were in, well, most of them got sucked up into the one settlement that was then drowned by the Protectorate in the same sort of attack that supposedly was underhanded and evil when the Chinese Imperial Union were doing it to us. As for the East Coast, we all get to live under the oppressive thumb of Chevalier and his wardens, or your choice of parahuman warlord on one of Gimel's associated parallels. One quick message before we start our program for today, dear listeners. Give a fond welcome back to my sidekick, Eleanora James, alias the Norfair Disaster, fresh from a brief tour of Megacity Gimel. Her little break covered a political demonstration against the rampant corruption of the wardens that have betrayed the principles of the Protectorate in the name of security. A violent string of actions against the similarly rampant corruption of the university system that denied applications from thousands of former students, such as Nora herself. And a drunken punch-out with a member of the patrol block group that said something rather nasty about Nora's mother. Good on you, Nora. Welcome back to Killington, and the cold, and the world beyond the hero's attention. We'll start today's news with a sad, sad message for everyone. Our beloved goddess is dead by disembowelment. This marks the third time in as many years that I have lost a figure of adoration and worship, and is proof that I should just stop putting my faith in anything or anyone besides my dear peers. Any of our listeners still interested in a Cape-run dystopian world aren't totally out of luck, as Goddess's right-hand woman and a sickening, sickening traitor is still offering the same deal that Goddess was. Sign up with her and you can help rule a world. That is, if you're okay with serving under a parahuman sexual offender. Panacea! You can still decide to serve her if you're all right with a woman who has violated another human being's sexual identity and one who mutilates people when they reject her affection. Apparently, Panacea decided that a dystopian society run by her heroic values of sister-kissing and incredibly bad fashion sense was preferable to one run by a literal goddess. In related news, Goddess's death comes alongside rumors of every villain escaping the parahuman prison, and those rumors are not true, listeners. Now, this is the parahuman prison that had been housing everything from repeat offenders from the birdcage to surviving members of the Slaughterhouse 9. The heroes have successfully managed to prevent the escape of Unicorn, a cape that they insist on calling monocorus, or however many of those vowels or syllables or whatever that they threw in there, and all of 2 damsels of distresses. Thankfully, that leaves everyone else. Although most of them have decided to help Panacea to take over Earth Supreme. Thank Goddess, well, thank whatever I'll be worshipping in her place this time tomorrow that these capes are no longer Earth Gimel's problem, and will instead be terrifying and oppressing the America of another Earth. In summary, Goddess is dead, Panacea is a parahuman sexual offender, and the Earth Supreme is now ruled by the same sort of criminal scum that ruled Brockton Bay. Moving on to lesser news, in sports, Brockton Bay has forfeited their match against Boston in women's rugby, owing to the giant portal still slicing Brockton Bay Gimel in half, and cutting off most of their team from attending, and the tragic death of their star players Khan Laura and Danny Kirsch, who were both killed in a parahuman confrontation earlier this morning. In parahuman confrontation news, hero Silverstrings and villain Glassgirl fought to the death in Brockton Bay earlier this morning, and the death of a number of innocent bystanders earlier this morning resulted. This was in the MB Gardens section of Brockton Bay, some 100 miles away from the city centre of the megacity of Earth Gimel, and proof that we really ought to separate these out rather than just, assuming it's all the one place. Their deaths highlight the increasing violence of Cape conflicts, of course. Oh. In political news, wasting no time after finally finding their headquarters again, the Wardens' senior members are all presently off declaring war on literally everyone and anyone they can find, regardless of the fact that our infinite Earths guarantee an endless supply of resources. The European settlement has also officially recognized Great Britain as a part of the European Union, in a posthumous gesture that has offended the few survivors that hoped to respect Britain's decision to remain independent from the EU. Finally, fashion news. The increasing tendency of capes to wear the colour rouge or maroon or others have driven it from popularity among regular humans, who have begun to realise that maroon is a little like dried blood. The new in-colour in parahuman fashion, pale greens with either a white or a black. This ends today's news, listeners, but not our broadcast. We'll be ending today's broadcast with a selection of letters from our listeners, ensuring that anyone that doesn't like that sort of thing can just give up and tune out. I'm not going to blame you, and I'm not going to judge you, but I am going to look at you with this little pleading expression. I'm rather sad if you aren't listening to these, because they represent people that wanted to write in, and they represent the normal people of Earth Gimel, whose voice is sadly ignored most of the time. Our first letter is from Anonymous, which is typically a good sign that someone is afraid of being held responsible for their actions and for their choice of words. Dear Mr. Guy, I am writing you this letter to congratulate you on your excellent joke. Was one of the countermeasures a bullet, by any chance? Aha, good one. Keep them coming. That's almost as hilarious as all the stories where fire-breathing dragons get slain by knights by wearing metal armors and wielding lances that dragons could use as toothpicks while mounted on horses who would make a fine main course after the appetizer. Just shoot the fairy queen with a bullet. Hilarious. I'm sure no one has tried that before. Hey, you know what? I bet no one has just tried to shoot an Endbringer with bullets either. Captain Gunperson might just be the most powerful hero ever, and we just didn't know it, because no one has tried guns. I'm looking forward to more broadcasts. Keep the humor up. We need it in these troubled times. Best regards, an anonymous citizen. Dear Anonymous, St. George, I know you Yanks, and yes, I know that all Americans are Yankees as far as I'm concerned, but aren't as far as you're concerned. I know that Yankees aren't exactly familiar with anything British, but there's a reason why our cross is red on white, and that's because of St. George the Dragon Slayer, patron saint of England, whose colours still proudly fly when I can be bothered to raise them. As for the rather inane joke about Endbringers, I can recall several occasions when nuclear weapons were deployed against them, and that conventional firearms were of course utilised against the hero bringer the first time round. One can imagine a chance of a little more success against a teen Welsh woman. Besides, it's a moot point anyway, given that she's been forgiven for all of her past crimes. Everyone's been forgiven for all their past crimes, no matter how nice they are now. And I have stopped caring about Glost Tigger Ooh Ah Innie. And if she managed to make it through VSR Day, then she can go around dressing herself up like a neo-Nazi for all I care. The next letter, coming from a cape rather concerned with her portrayal in the media. Greetings and salutations. Whilst I cannot say that I am a dedicated listener of your delightful show, I have managed to catch quite a few broadcasts over the last few months. In particular, your Master Stranger awareness portions have been quite illuminating, but it brings me to a point of much consternation for me. With all this goddess business on the horizon, it has brought a veneer of paranoia over everything to do with masters. Not all masters are like the ghastly Heartbreaker or his brood of dreadful children, or that impudent Valifor. Indeed, those masters deserve the fear and wariness that they provoke, but there are other masters who do not deserve such reputation. I speak, of course, of those with non-human minions. I myself am one of those masters, though my methodology has gotten me labeled as a so-called tinker. My darling little drones are designed to die in droves, not to take over the minds of innocents. I firmly believe that there shall be more differentiation between the innocent minion masters and those terrible mind stealers. I have been accused of such horrendous things and have been forced to hide my capabilities for fear of idiots who cannot distinguish between different types of masters. In fact, I was recently in a fight with a wannabe hero who believed that any communication on my part was a dangerous trick. My robots require exciting battles with intrepid foes to evolve, not insipid slap fights where the enemy has their fingers shoved in their ears. Thank you, dear host, for the invaluable public service that your show provides, and I hope you consider the plight of masters with non-human friends. Yours sincerely, Governess. Well, Governess, thank you for writing in, and thanks for bringing another deficiency of the PRT to my attention. I've always been happy to mock their pathetic and ineffectual nature for a while now, and... my assistant Nora is making very scary faces to me from the other room, which probably means that I've gone a little far. I'm sorry, and I am amused if your choice of name has ever gotten you confused with our dearly departed goddess, or as she was known by blasphemers, heretics, and people that deserve to have their cape names changed to something vulgar, the Woman in Blue. Now, masters clearly warrant the same response between people that control you and people that control dogs and insects. That's insects. I know my accent is a little bad, but I was trying to use skitter as an example, not panacea. And as that was sarcasm, not unknown to you Yankees, I meant that as a joke. Masters and controllers were compiled into the same category quite a while ago, alongside blasters and nukers. Just roll with it, it was probably a PR thing. And moving on, our last and final letter from long-time listener Martin Vettins. Dear Mr. Guy, this is Martin Vettins again. We've continued listening to your show, and we're glad you're still on the air. You seem to be the only voice of reason on the airwaves nowadays. And forgive me, listeners, if I almost laugh at that. Or at least the only one willing to speak frankly about some of the things that seem taboo in modern media. Our little community is prospering, and luckily we haven't had to put your advice regarding hostile capes into effect. Now, to my primary reason for writing this letter. Mr. Guy, as a fellow resident of the Vermont stretch, could you recommend safe places and communities for others like me and the little group that I reside with to trade with, or at least to communicate with? As important as many of the issues you discuss are, even one bit of local geopolitics would greatly improve our ability to trade, and suffice without relying on the megacity. As it is, we're limited to selling our goods to settlements like the megacity. Plus, a few of our members get a bit stir-crazy in between trips to the megacity, which are rare now, due to the rigors of winter. Also, to address your latest show, our little community has been debating trying to purchase some more powerful firearms than the few sidearms and hunting rifles we've got at the moment, for self-defense, of course. So we turn to you. What's your opinion on this? Is the purchase of guns worth it to defend ourselves against the threats arising? Also, we listen to you, Mr. Guy. Just want to make sure you know that. Sincerely, Martin Vettins. P.S. Hopefully, enclosed in this package is a scarf. Winter gets even colder up in Killington than down here, or so I heard. Stay safe and warm, Mr. Guy. Well, Martin, Killington is good for actual clothes, but we don't have much excess in the way of things to trade. Try New Haven or Woodstock. They've got a few excess pelts. I don't trade much myself, even with locals, as my lifestyle tends towards hunting independently. But I hear that New Haven does have a source of fresh water, so that is a definite plus. we're going off glacial meltwater. Regards firearms, buy guns, and shoot any cape that tries to use the phrase unwritten rules within earshot of you. And if you've already got guns, no need for any better ones. A good hunting rifle is perfectly good for hunting, as well as knocking the head off of the people that tend to say things like, well, the sanctimonious villains telling you that they're better than the real monsters. As a real monster myself, I can tell you that they're the first people that say someone's gone too far, and then they go right back to the human trafficking and the drug dealing. But in that respectful and community-oriented way they go on and on about. Honestly. Thanks for writing in, Martin, and thanks for the scarf. Red is definitely my colour. Right, that's it for the letters for tonight. Thanks for tuning in, dear listeners. And as, well, I've never said it before, but stay safe. And try to be festive. Winter is coming, but that means the holiday season is on its way too. Don't be so glum about everything. Even the Slaughterhouse 9 celebrated Christmas. La la da 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 la da da. La da 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 la da da. This was a fan production for Parahuman audio community content. Ward, Worm, and the Parahuman series are all owned and written by John Wildbow McRae and can be found at parahumans.wordpress.net and parahumans.net. Thanks to Rain, creator of the Ward Audiobook Project, for hosting us on the Ward Audiobook Project's community content section, which is where we've been for quite some while now, although we do have a Stitcher for any of those interested. Just search Vermont Stretch Radio. There's nobody else with the same name as us. Let's see. Any further issues that I can think of to discuss? Well, a big thank you to Kitius and to Tamerlane, a perpetual source of amusement and conversation, and to Kira and Zoe, longtime friends and authors of the Worm fanfiction, Fault, not Polt. One final one to Pitta Enigma for a fair bit of interesting conversation and sending me books that are rather amusing. The Wildcard series, which I can recommend to any listeners that were fans of Worm, which you probably are if you're listening to somebody ramble on and on about Ward, and fictional events in Ward at that. Right, that's it for today, and as always, the music vaguely hummed at the end was Brazil, the song from Terry Gilliam's 1985 film. If you're moderately interested in checking that out, it's a bit of a surrealist journey, and it helps one to understand what starting work is like. Bye-bye, dear listeners. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.